major. There's like so many of my education friends are here, and it puts a smile on my face. It really means a lot to me. Thanks for coming. So welcome to my presentation, My Friend the Wise Owl, Ancient Stoicism as a Social Emotional Learning Tool in Children's Literature. And as Professor O said, and by the title I'm sure you can expect, for my project I decided to write a children's book called My Friend the Wise Owl, a tale of an owl and a boy who became king. I designed it for elementary age students, but specifically for classroom teachers and also parents or guardians, for the sake of back and forth philosophical discussion between the reader and the young child, with the young child playing a huge part in that too. And it's all about the question that we always ask ourselves all the time: how do we live well? And I have a physical copy of the book, in case you get a little bored, and you can look at it. This is not the final copy of the book. This is the first one that I just wanted to get out there to have something physical in time for Academic Festival. Professor O caught a lot of grammar mistakes in there. And there's a couple like a dedication page missing, and a couple other things. So I put a couple of edits in there too. But yeah, if you want to pass that around, take a little look, have something physical in your hand. So just to outline my presentation, I'm going to do it in 3 parts. Part 1 is asking the question, why can we and why should we philosophize with children? Part 2 is, what is Stoicism? Taking that in 2 parts, ancient versus modern Stoicism, and then what's the current state of modern Stoicism today? And then we're going to dive into the story a little bit, which I'm very excited for. All right, so that first question, why philosophize with children? When I was talking to people about this project, a lot of questions that I got were around a lot of questions were like, you want to do philosophy with kids? What are you talking about? You want to do Stoicism with kids? What are you talking about? Is that appropriate? Are they ready for it? I think they are. During my time as an education major, especially student teaching the last couple of years, I think we can all see that young students are natural philosophers, just at their core. They're very curious, and they're definitely concerned with fairness and justice, both for themselves and in terms of their wider world. Also, teachers already use literature as moral education through whole class read-alouds or independent reading in their classrooms already. So, and that's a way of life philosophy already. How do you act with other people? I think it's also important to remember that ancient philosophers often use philosophy for the sake of self-improvement and also better relations within their social circle and beyond that with the wider world. And I have a quote down here from an American philosopher named Gareth Matthews from the 20th century. His research is all around philosophizing with children and why you should do that. And he says, there's a certain innocence and naivete about many, perhaps most, philosophical questions. This is things we ask ourselves all the time. What is love? Why are we here? How do I live the best life? What is happiness? How do I be happy? Even the question, why, is very simple. But it's questions that young children ask all the time, and it's the same questions that we ask as adults all the time too. So it's not in spite of the age of the children that I wanted to write this book, it's also because of it. I thought they were absolutely ripe for this kind of discussion, and in my experience, they get it. I do have permission to put these pictures up for you guys. This is my 2nd grade class that I student taught with full time in the fall semester at Lake Avenue, just down the road. And I went back a couple times to be a mystery reader, both to just say hi, I missed them, but also as kind of a little experiment to see, was I right in my theory that these guys were ready for real philosophical discussion. So in this book, I'm reading Zen Shorts, which as you can imagine is also a very spiritual book, not just a philosophical book. It's inspired by Buddhist and Taoist philosophy. And that book, along with The Bad Seed, they tackled a lot of themes such as how our mind affects our judgment, but ultimately how we have agency over our own actions and our own mental states at the end of the day. And I was really surprised by the kind of discussions that I was having with that class, and I was really, really impressed. And one specific example, this is my friend Dylan. As you can guess, this is during our Halloween party. And he said in one of our discussions when we were reading The Bad Seed, he said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it. And I thought that reminded me a lot of a quote from Epictetus, who's a Stoic philosopher during the Roman period in Greece. He says, men are disturbed not by the things which happen, but by their opinions about the things. And I think that's really cool, because Dylan and Epictetus at two completely different stages of life and 2,000 years apart are getting at the same exact core idea. And I think they're both actively practicing it too. So let's just set our terms. What is Stoicism? Because that's a word that's definitely thrown around a lot in the modern world. And also, how do we compare ancient and modern Stoicism? So Stoicism is an ancient philosophy, and ancient philosophy is mainly broken up into three different parts. We have the physics of an ancient philosophy, which is really the science. So how do we understand the world around us is the key question. We have the logic, which is how do we interpret the information we receive and then make appropriate judgments. And then we have the ethics, which asks the question, how do we live virtuously, emphasizing wisdom and temperance, or balance, in order to be free from pathos. And pathos is a Greek word that means passions, but passions in kind of a negative way, like negative afflictions, like lust, greed, anger, sadness. How do we free ourselves from that? And I bolded that and I put it in gold because modern Stoicism pulls from this ethics point of ancient Stoicism. Modern Stoicism doesn't really try to approach the physics or the logic for the most part. What's out there in bookstores, what's out there online. It all comes from the ethical, the ethical part of Stoicism. And that's also what I pulled from my book. In my book, I'm not pulling from physics or logics, I'm only concerned with the ethics. So this is one version of modern Stoicism. I think modern Stoicism is in two different groups right now. I chose two authors, Ryan Holiday and Donald J. Robertson. If you guys have ever heard of, Josh, you okay? If you guys have ever heard of the Daily Stoic or maybe seen some of Ryan Holiday's books, Ryan Holiday says that Stoicism is a philosophy designed to make us more resilient, happier, more virtuous, more wise, and as a result, better people, better parents, and better professionals. And Donald J. Robertson is a modern, actively practicing psychotherapist who uses Stoic practices in his work with his patients. He says the goal of life is to strive for wisdom by living rationally, in greater harmony with our own nature, the community of mankind, and the nature of the universe as a whole. So as you can see, they're tackling topics such as how to make us more resilient, happier, more virtuous, wise, better people, better friends, living in harmony with ourselves and other people. This is that key point of ancient Stoicism of working with our wider world, but also it's all honed in on the ethical. And this is modern pop Stoicism, which is a term coined by Dr. Nancy Sherman, who's one of the most famous Stoic authors out there right now. And some quick proof of this is that a couple months ago, I just put into YouTube Shorts how to be Stoic, and these were the results that I got. As you can see, we see people start missing you when they see this. 7 reasons how to use rejection to your advantage. Destroy your enemy without fighting. 7 signs you're a highly attractive man. I did take a look and then my favorite, the dog obviously, these have nothing to do with Stoicism, especially this one. I did watch it. It was really interesting. Professor O can say that as well. We watched it together. But it has hundreds of thousands of views, which I think is pretty concerning. All of these have hundreds of thousands of views. When you look up Stoicism, that's what's there. You have to search a little bit harder for those what I think are more genuine forms of Stoicism. These are all me-focused. These are quick life hacks. They're not meant to be approached through your entire life slowly but surely. And they're all equated with financial success, personal success, power. I'm sure you guys have heard the name Andrew Tate. These are people that speak about Stoicism a lot, that in order to be Stoic, if you are Stoic, you will be rich, you will get lots of women, and you will have a great life. That's kind of the modern way, or online at least, of how Stoicism is connected to personal success. So through my book, I wanted to combat that so that children at a young age can engage with a form of Stoic philosophy before they get to that. Because I personally really love Stoicism in its most genuine form. I think it's helped me out a lot in my personal life, so I wanted to kind of give that back. I also wanted to create an interesting story that combined ancient history, so it's kind of a historical fiction book, and language. Looking at Professor Somerville Braun over there. There's a lot of Latin in the book too, a lot of accessible and easy Latin to understand. And then of course, using Stoicism as the social emotional learning strategies for the classroom teachers to speak about with students. And this all has to do with shifting your perspective, in order to feel gratitude and other things. And then most importantly, I wanted to center students as both students of philosophy, but also philosophers in their own right. The wisdom of the owl is not set in stone. It's set in a way, and the owl questions in a way, where the student can say, you know what, I disagree with that. And then the teacher or the parent can say, why do you disagree with that? And then in that moment, the student becomes the philosopher. And I think that's really powerful. So the wisdom that I pulled from for my book is what I pulled from what I call the Stoic Big Three. These are Stoic thinkers and writers from a later period in ancient Stoic history, from the Roman period. We have Seneca the Younger, who was an advisor to the infamous Emperor Nero. We have Epictetus, who we spoke about before, and then we have the very famous Emperor Marcus Aurelius, famous for his meditations. And then I added his predecessor, Antoninus Pius, in there, though he was not Stoic in a traditional sense. A little smaller, right? Because he was not Stoic in a traditional sense, but in Marcus's meditations, he speaks very highly of Antoninus as kind of a natural Stoic figure. And I also just really love the quote that Antoninus said, and he's also my favorite emperor. So I felt like I had to include him in there. So my book is broken up into 3 parts, or 3 different characters, really. We have, actually, no, there's 2. We have the boy. He's loosely based on Marcus Aurelius, and he experiences difficult situations and emotions throughout the book that are age-appropriate and able to be approached in a wise and accessible way. We have the owl, who's loosely based on Athena. A lot of statues of Athena have an owl on her shoulder, which is supposed to be representative of her wisdom. She acts as a Stoic guide or a sage, but also, I think most importantly, a motherly figure who loves the boy unconditionally, so that whoever is reading the book can also feel that way about the owl and trust the owl. And then back to the language. There's a lot of accessible, simple Latin in the book where when the student gets to that, they can kind of infer what that word means. Mater, pater. When you see mater and pater next to a mom and a dad, the student can say, oh, I think that means mom and dad. The Latin amicus is similar to the Spanish amigo, so if you have Spanish speakers in the room too, they can also engage with that. Rome, Egypt, Britain, things that are kind of expected and easy to be translated. And then at the end of the book, the boy, who becomes emperor, a very wise emperor, writes a book for children in the story titled Amica Mea Sapiens Natua, which means My Friend the Wise Owl. So the students can be like, oh my god, that's the title of the book. So for my book, I'm not the best artist, and there's also a time constraint, there's a compensation question. I got a lot of great offers from friends of mine who wanted to illustrate my book. But I decided to use Midjourney, which is an AI image producer. I liked it. I thought it worked well for the book. As you can see, the illustrations are pretty good. It's just a little difficult to use. It took a couple days to get a set text that worked in the search bar. And also, if you flip through the book, you can see that the boy does not really look consistent throughout. Most of the time, there's like one page where the boy's blonde, and one picture the boy looks like he's like 5 years old, another one he looks like he's like 12. That was something that I just didn't want to fight with, and when I got an image that I felt was just a good concept image that I could give to somebody and say, this is what I kind of want the illustrations to look like, I was done. And so there's about 35 to 40 images within that book, so I was also working on a time constraint too. So I'd love to read a part of the book for you guys. This is the second interaction between the boy and the owl, just some context for the story. It's raining. The boy hates the rain. He's all wet, he's upset. He goes into the woods where the owl lives. He's hiding beneath a bush because he's afraid. And then the owl comes and meets him and starts to guide him to understand how to shift your perspective, why the rain might actually not be a very bad thing. The owl says, take a look at this tree behind us. How do you think this tree got so big and strong? From water and sunshine. And where do you think this water came from? From the rain. And if you were the trees or the flowers or the leaves, how do you think you would feel when it rained? I'd probably feel pretty excited. My friend, if the plants can rejoice when it rains, why shouldn't you? Think of all the fun things you and I could do. These words from the owl shifted something in the boy's brain. Instead of being afraid, he looked around and saw all the fun things he could do in the rain. He saw puddles to jump in and was able to slip and slide all around, and even found soups to stir in the ground. The owl beamed. She loved watching the boy have fun. Do you see now, my friend? It wasn't the rain that made you upset, but how you thought about it that did. And this is a quote from Epictetus that I just readapted and reworded for the story. After playing, the boy was as happy as he could be. However, he looked down and realized how dirty his clothes had gotten. Oh no, I'm filthy! My mater is going to be so upset. I should have never come out here in the rain. Once again, the owl laughed. But this time, it was loud and joyful. Oh no, well, I wonder what we could possibly do to clean you up. The boy looked at the owl, who winked back at him. Does anyone have any ideas of what? I'm sure.
Stand in the rain.
Let's see. The boy stood still. Then it hit him. He looked up at the sky and also started to laugh. As he spun and ran and leaped, the rain began to wash off all the dirt. He was as clean as ever. The boy danced and sang, "Thank you, rain, thank you, rain." The owl could not have been more pleased. It seems the rain has given us all we needed today. It gave us great fun and even cleaned us up afterwards. Thank you, rain. So that was the rainy scene. I thought this was a really great scene to use because it's very accessible. No matter what age you are, you have to contend with the weather when you walk outside. And I think a lot of us, myself included, are in a practice of letting the weather affect how we feel. When it's raining, we tend to say, oh, it's so gloomy outside, which means it's going to be a gloomy day, which means when you put that on the rain, you feel gloomy. Versus if it's sunny outside, you allow that to let you have a beautiful day. However, I think we can learn, as the boy learned, that the rain, just because it's rain does not mean your day has to be better. As the boy learns, the rain is actually a source of life for plants, which is a source of life for us. It's a source of strength for trees. So I think when we shift that perspective, when we walk outside when it rains, I think we can actually feel pretty grateful when it rains outside. So this is all about shifting perspective and gratitude. And things are not all bad or all good. If you're a classroom teacher, you can implement practices such as turn-in talks or whole class brainstorms to one, center the students as experts, but also to expand on this story. You can ask questions like before, do you agree with the owl? Why or why not? There might be a student who's like, no, I hate the rain because of X, Y, Z. But allowing that student to say that, and then allowing the other students to respond as a teacher or as a parent, you've actively created a philosophical discussion where all the students are philosophers. And that's really powerful. You can also say, are there any other events that we can think of that we thought were initially bad but actually turned out to be pretty good? So we can take the core lesson from this story and then students can learn how to apply it for the rest of their life, which is something that we're doing too all the time. There's not really that much difference between a child and us. So yeah, this is philosophy with children in action using a scene like this. So just a quick reflection on my book. I had an absolute blast writing the book. This is something that I knew I wanted to do for a while. So I'm really grateful for Professor O I remember sending her a big long email at the end of junior year and she was like, go for it. And she's been such a support system for me. My friends have also been such a support system for me too. I was always in our apartment and I was like, guys, let me read you this, and they would all come into my room and I would do a read aloud for them. Like, a lot of the scenes too, especially the rainy scene, are also scenes that, conversations that I've had with my friends too. I would eventually love to publish this story, which would mean, of course, finding an agent, a human illustrator, and then a publisher. So I plan to take a gap year after this year before grad school. So I look forward to doing that. Maybe I could create some more ancient history themed stories. I've already, the gears are turning. I had so much fun with this. I'd love to do it again. I think this is like a cool untapped market, both ancient history-wise and philosophy-wise. So with that, I'd love to leave you with my favorite Stoic quote from Marcus Aurelius. He says, that kindness is invincible, provided it's sincere, not ironic or an act. What can even the most vicious person do if you keep treating him with kindness? And I try to live by that, and I think we all can too. Thank you very much.